So yeah, trust your training. This is the day to go for it. Don't hold back. So good morning, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a video for you sharing 10 tips I wish I had known before racing my first marathon. My first marathon was about a month's time ago, the Copenhagen Marathon. I've got the t-shirt and the medal here. I thoroughly enjoyed the process. Yeah, really good course. And I had a great day out there. Ran 2:28 for my debut, which I was absolutely chuffed with. I'm already planning ahead to the next one. So yeah, that's something to look forward to on the channel. So if you are new, make sure you subscribe for more running related videos that come weekly. But without further ado, let's jump into 10 top tips. So tip number 1 is nothing new on race day. Now what I mean by this is the shoes, the socks, the shorts, the vest top, even the hat that you're going to wear need to be items that you're familiar with. You need to practice in your training with the kit that you plan to race in, just so you can get comfortable with it. There's nothing worse than maybe trying on a new pair of shorts for race day, getting 10 miles in and then having some bad chafing, because believe me, I've had that issue, and I'd rather have that on a training run than on the race day itself. So yeah, my top tip would be not to try anything new on race day. A good way you can do this is to practice with the kit you're going to run in on your long runs. So the 2 sort of key long runs before my marathon, I wore the kit that I was going to wear on race day, just so I knew that I was going to be comfortable in it. And yeah, it's good just to get in the habit of practicing that. The same goes for fueling. So the gels you're going to consume on the day, or your other alternative ways of fueling, you need to practice that in your training. You don't want to be trying something new. So for example, I did a half marathon once and there was these fancy energy drinks on the course, and I thought, yeah, it's perfect, I'll try that. That will fuel me for the rest of the half marathon. I'd not practiced with that fueling and it caused me some stomach issues, and yeah, basically led to me having a poor race on the day. So yeah, don't go grabbing that Red Bull at the side of the road if it's something you've never practiced. And the same goes for your pre-race meal. Don't change it. Don't feel on the morning of the marathon you suddenly need to eat 10 Weetabix when you usually would only eat 2. You might want to increase it a little bit to get that carb loading, but again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So tip number 2 is fueling, and it sort of carries on from point number 1. Everybody's different, so it's again something you need to practice. For me, every 8 kilometers I can consume a gel, and I know that's what my body can sort of handle. Some people like to consume more, some people can't consume gels at all. So yeah, maybe bananas, or yeah, look at alternative ways you can get the energy back into your body, because over the course of the marathon, your glycose and your glycogen levels in your muscles are going to reduce, and you need to top them up if you want to sort of maintain your pace across the marathon. And fueling is not just about the sugars that you can get in, it's also about the salts. So I already know, looking back at my first marathon, electrolytes, unfortunately I didn't get enough in during the race. And yeah, that sort of hindered me towards the end. I got to about 35 kilometers and was having some stomach cramps. I think if I'd been able to get a bit more salty sort of electrolytes on board, I may not have had so many issues with that. On to tip number 3, and that is a tune-up race. Before I raced the marathon, I did races, I did 5k, 10k and a 10 miler, all in the build-up. And the beauty of taper races is you get to test your fitness, test your race plan, your fueling, the kit again, and you also get a really good boost from a sort of tune-up race that you can then take into your marathon. So my advice would be to do your tune-up race maybe somewhere between 6 and 3 weeks before the actual marathon race itself. You don't want to do it too early that you're not going to see the benefit of the fitness, but you don't want to do it too soon to race day that you're going to still carry some of that fatigue into the marathon. Now with tune-up races, you don't want to taper into these, you just want to treat them as a training run, and the great thing about them is that you can do them with basically 0 pressure. And they're great for building confidence ahead of race day. So tip number 4 is position your supporters. If you're lucky enough to have friends and family coming out to watch you do the marathon, make sure you position them in places where you want them basically. So for me, that was at 18 kilometers and 26 kilometers in Copenhagen. In hindsight, I would have liked somebody a little bit further along the course, not only for like providing you with drinks or electrolytes, but also just for the morale. In the last sort of section of the race, that's when you're really going to need that extra support and uplift. And yeah, if you have some supporters with you on the day, I'd recommend putting them between mile 20 and 25 on the course. That for me is when I really needed that extra bit of help. So yeah, that's a top tip. Make sure you get your family and friends to stand in certain points on the course and know where they're going to be on race day, so you can basically look forward to it. So tip number 5 is a really important one, and that is to race the conditions. Now during your marathon build up, it's likely that you've got a time in mind that you want to run for the marathon, but the important thing is that you have to race the conditions on the day. So whether it's a really hot day or the course is really hilly, you're going to have to adjust your pace slightly to race the conditions on the course. Knowing that beforehand is a really good tip, so looking up things like the elevation, the course route, knowing where water stations are. If it happens to be a really warm day when you're racing your marathon, know on the start line that you're going to have to adjust your pace slightly. If you don't, you could risk overcooking it early on and having a bit of a crappy race. So my top tip for racing a marathon would be to race the conditions. Tip number 6 is don't start the race too fast, but at the same time try and find a pack early on. You'll know from my videos I much prefer running in a group, and that for me happened to be the elite ladies in Copenhagen. What an awesome experience running alongside of some of the best Ethiopian and Kenyan runners, marathon runners. On the female side of things, maybe one day we'll catch up to the men. Highly doubt that, but for the time being I loved running along with the elite women. So yeah, on the start line, speak to people, find out what sort of time they're going for. Maybe they can work with you. It's also good markers. If somebody says they're going to go off much faster than you, you know at the start line, don't go with those people, because you're going to basically start off too fast, overcook it, and then a marathon, I'm sure you know, is a long way. So it's hard to sort of hold on to the pace. Whereas if you're doing a shorter race, you can sometimes get away with starting too fast. You can't do that in the marathon. Tip number 7 is to trust your training. Something I like to do before a race is to think back to all of the training runs I did. Not necessarily the runs that went great, but some of the runs that went really not so great. So for me, one session I remembered on the start line was a 3x5k track session I did, I think maybe a week, 2 weeks before the marathon. It didn't go very well, and I used it for sort of fuel to push me forward, but I also thought back to the long runs that went really well, all that effort I put in. So yeah, a top tip would be to trust your training. The marathon, you are not going to get this opportunity to race one again. Unlike sort of 5 and 10Ks that you can do sort of once a month, the marathon, to get right, you need to be doing like one marathon every 6 months. So yeah, trust your training. This is the day to go for it. Don't hold back. Give it everything out there on the course, and just trust the process. Tip number 8 is to hustle on the start line. Make sure you get into the position you want to. You're in the right sort of zone. So if that means getting to a race 2 hours early just to make sure you're in the right sort of starting pen, then so be it. I was fortunate enough to get right to the very start, right to the very front, of the sort of non-elites in my marathon, which basically meant as soon as the gun went, I was running with the elites, and I was able to find a pack really easily. If I'd have been all the way back, say maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 rows back behind people, I would have had a lot of congestion to get through, and the elite runners that I ended up running with may have been long gone at that point. So tip number 9 is hydration. Now that doesn't mean just drinking a load of water the day and the morning of the marathon. In fact, that may actually hinder your race if you flush out all of the good stuff in your body by going to the toilet all the time. So yeah, hydration is not just about water, it's about salts, getting the magnesium into your body, all of those nutrients that you need to function at your best on race day. So my advice would be 2 or 3 days out from the marathon, make sure you've got sort of a water supply on you at all times. You don't want to be taking big sort of, I don't know, pints of water at a time. It's just slowly sipping away, making sure your water body water percentage stays high over those few days, so that when you hit the start line, you're hydrated. I used Bix Hydration, these little electrolyte tablets that you put into your water and you just drink. So yeah, good way to make sure you've been replacing all the salts, because if you increase the amount of water you intake, then yeah, you may flush out some of the good stuff in the body that you're going to need on race day. So yeah, hydration is not just about water, and that's something that's key to remember. And my 10th and final tip is how to consume gels. Now, I've never been taught how to sort of eat a gel whilst running, and I don't know about you, I find it really difficult sometimes. So in my first few sort of races, in my tune-up races, when I was trying to consume gels, I would literally get the gel and put the whole contents of the packet into my mouth. I'd find it really hard to swallow it all, and I also sort of made myself go into oxygen debt because I couldn't breathe at the time. So there's about a 5-10 second period whilst running really fast where I couldn't breathe, so you basically put yourself into the red. So yeah, my top tip for eating gels is something I practiced again in my training, is take them over the course of a kilometre or a mile. So with the Morton gels that I use, they're a bit thicker, so I sort of could bite a little bit off, a really small amount, maybe half a mouthful, and get it down, then carry on running for a bit. Another sort of, I don't know, 30 seconds later, have a little bit more. Don't feel that you need to get that whole gel sachet into your mouth in one go, because yeah, you're going to have some issues with breathing, and yeah, probably not the best for just putting all that into your stomach at one point. So my top tip for eating gels would be little and often, and yeah, don't rush that process. So that pretty much sums up today's video. 10 top tips I wish I'd known before racing my first marathon. If you found it interesting, please leave a like. Maybe comment down one of your top tips in the description. If you are training for a marathon, I wish you all the best of luck. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to follow my next marathon training block, which I think, it's not confirmed yet, will be Valencia in December time. If not, a winter marathon around then. But yeah, thanks for watching. As always, aspire to run, run to inspire. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and we'll see you again soon.